Good afternoon, and welcome to the Music and Technology Seminar at Carnegie Mellon. Our guest today is Preston Steimel, third-year Carnegie Mellon student studying engineering and music technology. Preston plays drums and bass guitar and a variety of non-traditional electronic-related instruments, and has additional background as a concert-level pianist. Preston traveled to China this past summer as part of a study abroad experience supported by the Jennings Family Brave Companions Fund. The purpose of the trip was to observe music technology in a few cities in China and to improve his Mandarin language skills. Please welcome Preston Steimel to the Music and Technology Seminar.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to get sharing real quick and then we can get started. That's the wrong share. That's the right one. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Music and Tech Seminar. Today, I'll be going over my experience documenting basically whatever music technology I could find during my stay in China as part of the CSU Study Abroad program. I'll just start with some background of myself. My mom is Chinese and my dad is white. And so even though I grew up with Mandarin in my house and I had a lot of people trying to teach me how to speak it well, I was kind of still a little kid and very unwilling, perhaps. And, you know, that led me to about a year ago where I was basically completely illiterate, even though I could speak an okay amount. And so I would say not investing more into my Mandarin learning at a younger age is one of my bigger childhood regrets. That being said, I'm currently in BXA ECE in Music and Tech, studying digital signal processing and control theory so that I can make cool electronic instruments. Now, I'll talk a little bit about how I got to China. So at some point in 2023, the idea of going to China for vacation as a family was floated around. But my dad and siblings had some other obligations. And obviously, intercontinental flight is not the cheapest in the world. So it wasn't the strongest conceptualization of plans. But I was already feeling a little guilty about not being able to communicate with like my grandmother, my martial arts coaches, stuff like that. And so I took a Chinese course. This is 82-135, Chinese language and culture for heritage learners. The heritage learners just means I already have a little background. And so there's like an expected base level, but the literacy and other related things, maybe like grammar, are not as strong. Through that course, however, I learned about CMU's Shanghai study abroad program, and from there learned about the scholarship opportunities. And now the possibility of going back to China for the first time in 20 years was real. And so I applied to the different programs. I'll talk about this later on, the program itself as well as the scholarship opportunities. But I applied, got pretty generously gifted a very big scholarships, and then I was off to China to see some of my family and learn about the culture and the language and all this stuff. So now, as part of one of those scholarships, the Jennings Fund, I was required to do a little bit of a research project, and I decided to do that on the state of music technology in China. Just wanted to see what was similar to what we have here in the US, what was different, things of that nature. So this is the study abroad program. This is the Jennings Fund that I was lucky enough to get. And we'll go to our first stop, Qingdao. This is my mom's hometown. I still have family here, which is why I went there actually first. And it's a pretty wonderful place. It's coastal, so the weather was quite good for China at the time. It gets quite hot in different areas, and I'll talk about that eventually. But in my first couple days there, we were walking around the coastline, and I came across public karaoke. This is not something I think we really have, at least I've never come across it in the States. And so I thought this was a pretty interesting um, use of uh, music technology in a context we just kind of don't really see. So first thing that caught my eye was this very obviously Yamaha mixer. It just kind of popped out, and I kind of traced the signals. Looks like we've got a Bluetooth receiver. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse.
Yeah.
You can? Okay. Yeah, Bluetooth receiver. And that's going by RCA into this input here. And then we also have a wireless mic and a wired mic that these two gentlemen are using. And they're just connecting their phone to the Bluetooth device with an app that has the lyrics and stuff. So pretty straightforward stuff. It outputs to two speakers on the sides here. And there's small crowds gathering, and they're having fun. I think it's just a nice little atmospheric thing. The percussion instruments, I'm less sure how they would be used, but they're there, I guess, if you wanted to take advantage of them in your karaoke sessions. Although it's more of a performance setting in this situation. One thing that the thing that I think is the most interesting about this, though, is this logo right here. This is OSMC areas, which basically it coordinates and runs a lot of the tourist attractions and things of that nature. It's also where the Beijing Olympics were held for sailing back in 2008. So they have an aquarium and things like that. And it seems like this little spot is is done by them, and it's a state-owned sort of entity. So you've got like a government area to make music, which I think is a pretty interesting concept. It seems like kind of hard to imagine that we'd see something of that nature here. Anyways, moving on, music stores. So I visited a couple different music stores in Qingdao, and they have some. At the end of the day, they're still music stores, but sometimes you'll find instruments that you wouldn't find here. And so you can see on the left there's a electronic drum kit, which is pretty standard, but we've got some more traditional Chinese instruments as well as ukuleles. I think this one's the pipa, all strummed instruments. And there were also a couple piano companies. So this is probably the loudest Steinway I've ever seen in my life, color-wise. You don't usually see anything besides the standard. And I actually asked our CMU's piano technician, Peter Stumpf, about some of these piano brands, and turns out most of them are all just Pearl River piano under different names. Their quality, while it started in their inception, it was a little shoddy. He says they're currently just a notch under Yamaha, which is pretty high praise, I would say, considering how consistent Yamahas are. So, and of course, I played these instruments, and they're quite fine. But I think the existence of piano in this like the predominance, I should say, rather, of piano in China and also in Chinese American culture is quite interesting. It has some relations to what I'll talk about later in terms of certain Western elements that were brought in during the Cultural Revolution and earlier than that, even when China started being a little less isolationist. Anyways, moving on, we've got some more things, some precariously hung guitars and basses, which that one drove me a little bit nuts, but it's okay. I would like to bring a little bit of attention to some of the brands we're seeing. While we do have some of these less recognizable brands, we do also see Cube, which is a Roland product. We have Boss pedals, which are also Roland. And as we go through this presentation, you'll actually be seeing a lot of Roland. Like Roland is very, very popular, more than they are here, I would say. Here's me playing that very loud, not necessarily in volume, but in color, Steinway. And you can't see it in this picture right now, but in in a lot of amplification equipment and a lot of just like rack stuff in general, you'll see things labeled almost exclusively in English, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But again, it's one of those interesting like Westernization things. Finally, on the right, we have a couple traditional instruments. This one here is called the guqin, and this one's the guzheng, I'm pretty sure, at the very least. On the left here, there's an erhu, which is a two-string bowed instrument, and a couple of its bows here on the side. I did actually get the opportunity when I was here to learn a little bit from a teacher. I also I also went to a performance venue. I can't remember the name, but we can see some fun fun things to notice. So this was a piano trio, so piano, violin, and cello. And they were playing a nice Studio Ghibli set list, which was really beautiful and awesome to experience. But we've got looks like a slightly spaced pair on the piano, not getting stereo for the piano itself, but that's okay. And then we've got one of these large diaphragm condensers for the violin. There's another one for the cello. It's not in this picture. And then I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this piano brand, but Bluthner is my try for the day. They're a German company, so this is an imported piano, and this is actually a performance venue that was kind of like managed by this piano company. So kind of interesting that they set up shop like we have Steinway shops and things of that nature here. The next stop is Beijing, which, you know, Great Wall, cool stuff. But it was actually really interesting to go around some of these places that we're going to see. The first one was Lao Beijing, or Old Beijing. There's just this long strip of shops. They're kind of like bars. I couldn't really tell if they were serving alcohol to the degree that we'd expect normal bars to. But you could sit down. They were air conditioned, which was very much needed because unlike Qingdao, Beijing was really, really, really hot. So you could go in. There'd be like in every single one, there's a sound system. I'll show some of these real quick. Oh, there's a nice picture. I thought it was pretty. There's sound systems, instruments, little rack mounts, speakers, like a bunch of stuff set up so that people could go in and play. So there's they would just be busking, and here's some more pictures. There was this one room in particular where the speakers were facing the performers and they were the house speakers. So I thought that was a bit of a strange choice, but it worked, I guess. They weren't having feedback issues, and the sound was all right. It could have been better, I imagine. But yeah, sometimes there'd be a group of a couple people just strumming away at a guitar and singing. I think there was this one cello and then there was also a Chinese stringed, like plucked instrument duo, and then there was some more Western structured bands where they have drum, bass, keys, things of that nature. Again, I'm just going to point out we got Yamaha here. This is a Roland V drum set, another Roland keyboard. Like Roland's pretty big. Oh, and there's a nice duck that I thought was cute. And then Another time I went out to the National Center for the Performing Arts, which includes a couple different buildings. Unfortunately, when I went there, there was nothing going on at the time, but it was cool to walk around and see the spaces. So the five spaces include the Opera House, the Music Hall, Theater Hall, and oh, sorry, there's two more: Multifunctional Theater and the fifth space, which I think is kind of a funny name. It's in Chinese, it's basically the same thing, just the fifth space, um, which is also kind of multifunctional, but I guess they ran out of that name. Very, very cool architecture, and it fits a lot of stuff. But there was this Steinway piano set out. You can sort of see it's down here for as a temporary venue, and they had some sound systems around there. So I took a little bit of pictures around that. So there's an Audio Technica ATM 41HE sitting on this chair, basically a 58 clone and it seems to be pretty straightforwardly decent, dynamic mic. Um, there was this, there was a couple mixers and systems here for playback. So I just decided to take a couple pictures of the cable management to see if it was any better or any worse than recording services standards, or even the Vlahakis recording studio standards. And happy to report that we generally are a little bit more, how to say, conscientious about like slack on some things. But of course, this is just the one venue. This is not exactly representative of everything in the world, in China. But yeah, so that's about all for Beijing. Now we're moving on to Shanghai. Now, here's where I actually did the study abroad program. So this is where we had classes and there were events. There were other CMU students there. It was a pretty amazing experience. But I made sure to try my best to get some documentation done as well. And so I found this set up in a mall. This statue is outside of the mall, and I think it looks sick. And I wish there was more of this in the world, just cool looking things. But inside we have a very, very Roland setup with V drums, a cube, portable speaker, and a Boss bass amp. And I just like to talk for a second about language, because on a lot of these products, we'll find that the writing is still all in English. So now we have another layer. Not only are brands and types of instruments heavily influenced by what Western markets are asking for, because a lot of this stuff is made in China, um, and Japan and neighboring countries. Um, but I think it's kind of interesting that there's no like different version, I guess, for all of these things. This is all return, send, effect loop, you know. Of course, this stuff isn't like that difficult to figure out what it is, but on every product, it's kind of like this. So this is this, what was it? The Cube speaker, and I found it on Sweetwater just to see what you can buy here, and it looks exactly the same. The only thing that doesn't look the same is the power marking here. It says power here, and it's just in Chinese there. So just kind of interesting observation. In Shanghai, there was also a player piano in the hotel we were staying at. We just recently had our Disclavier Festival, I don't really know if, I'll just say our Disclavier Festival in Kresge Theater, led by Frederick Chu, Professor Chu, and he was also in here, was it a week ago or 2 weeks? I can't remember, but he was in here talking about the wonders of that instrument. And so this is a Strauss brand, a similar sort of deal. I don't think it has as much complexity as the Disclavier does, but it still works. Unfortunately, I didn't get to really try it much because of this do not touch sign, but I took some pictures of it just to see what it was like. I can see that this is not as beefy as the control board and power supply that the disc clavier has, and I don't see as much stuff going on around the pedals. I know there's like a big chunk with motors right about here on the disc clavier at least. But moving on, during as a part of the study abroad program, we visited three other cities, Hangzhou, Suzhou, and Nanjing. And while I didn't find a whole lot in Hangzhou and Suzhou, I did have some really wonderful experiences in Nanjing. Now, Nanjing was way hotter than anything we'd experienced before. I think one day it was like 44°C perceived, which is just skin melting. And
Huh.
so it's really hot,
Be in the room for
and
once.
things are
Yeah,
kind
there's
of
only a few people there unless she's directly behind this guy, which is possible.
going a little insane. And we finally get inside to walk through this like exhibition, and there's like this RGB lit guqin, and this is an instrument that I have learned about in my previous studies of Chinese music history. And so it was like crazy to finally see one in person, especially in this kind of strange context. But little did I know, after another trip outside in the scorching heat, I would come back inside to a little, I don't even know what you would call it. It was like sort of a shop, but just more a resting area. And there was actually another one there that the owners of the place allowed me to play. So here's a short clip of that. I won't play this video for too long, but so are you guys able to hear this right now, by the way? I might not have shared sound.
No, we can hear it.
Oh, you can? Okay, wonderful.
There's fourth, fifth, major sixth, and octave, straight up to octave.
So obviously, having heard about this instrument doesn't mean I'm going to automatically be incredibly good at it, but it was still really awesome to be able to sit down with it and make some of the sounds that a lot of people, myself included, it's like very strongly associate with like the traditional Chinese music. And here's a couple shots of like the tensioning system for the strings. I was trying to figure out how to tune it because there was one string that was a little bit out, but I decided it was better to play it safe and not break it because I feel like that wouldn't be the best of decisions. Anyways, then we found just I don't know if it was luck or whatever, but we were going through Nanjing. It's like this one big street with stores everywhere, and there's so many people, and it's just super busy and awesome. And we went into this one area that was kind of an exhibition about Chinese history. There was stuff about the beginnings of education in China, music, and this is one of those things. These bells are really, really old. I'm sorry I don't have an actual date, but they're incredibly old. And when I was again doing research on this stuff earlier, I was reading about these and the decisions for how they decided to like pitch them and all this stuff. And then I got to stand there right next to them. It was really wonderful stuff. Here on the side, there's stone chimes as well. Yeah, it's just not a whole lot more to say except it was just super cool. And then I go down the stairs, you know, make a turn or something, and all of a sudden I'm in this area where there's a bunch of uncles just like playing music together, and I showed interest, and so they decided to have me play some. Like they sat me down with an erhu, and this one guy just taught me how to play. I've never played a bowed instrument rather before, so this was like really nuts. Here's a short clip of that. He's like teaching me how to like get the right tension with my wrist, how to tension the bow, because the bow actually sits, as you can see in this picture, between the two strings, unlike with the violin where you're kind of gliding over the four. This sits between the two, so you're actually pushing using your middle fingers against the horse. Why am I pointing? You guys can't see that. Pushing pushing against the horsehairs, so they contact the string you want to play. Really like interestingly different dynamic, and you can also see that there's no fretboard. You're actually just pushing against the string. So a little more. And then once I feel like I'm getting the hang of it, I go for a short major scale, which is right. With the best intonation that I can muster. So this is what playing guitar does to you, I guess, at least a fretted one. Anyways, it was super enriching experience, and yeah, just really wonderful. And now I need to buy an erhu is the moral of the story. And so now I think it's about time to talk about how this was all possible, because realistically it would have been incredibly expensive to do this just out of pocket, and my family wouldn't be able to afford it straight up. So I'll talk a little bit about the Jennings Fund. So it's designed to allow students to travel to developing countries. I don't know what China's standing is in that regard, but it worked out anyways. Where you can study, travel, conduct research, and do some service work. So the requirements, you got to be an undergrad, sophomore, junior. It can be any major, as long as you're a citizen or permanent resident, and you've had full-time student status. You need to have your degree in progress, QPA requirements, stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a pretty standard stuff, I would say, for a scholarship. And then here's some stuff about its current situation. So it exists for this year, for this summer. The deadline is in 3 days, so maybe a little late to have this specific talk. But if you're considering something like this, it's good to have it on your radar. And so there's some procedures, and I won't go through like everything, but the gist of it is you choose a couple study abroad programs, you write an essay of intent, you also write what you want to do. You have an option of doing a research project, sort of like I did, or you can, what's it called? Or you can do a service sort of thing after you come back, promoting the Jennings Fund. And the main thing I would say about this, and this applies to any other study abroad or scholarship or anything opportunity, is don't let yourself reject yourself. I never thought in the first 2 years of going to CMU, and even the time before then, that I would ever do study abroad. It's like I'm okay just being where I am, but I just actually applying and just trying gives you that opportunity. Same thing goes for the scholarships. I didn't think, I was like, oh, there's people more qualified for these scholarships and all that stuff, but I applied anyways, and it worked out. And so by just giving the control over to somebody else, like you can increase your likelihood of getting experiences of this nature so much. Now, there was a couple other scholarships that helped out. There's a CMU Tartan's Abroad Scholarship that will give kind of whatever, they kind of look at whatever scholarships you've already gotten and kind of give whatever makes up for what's missing, I guess, depending on how you apply and stuff like that. And there's also some other scholarships that are under this LCAL Google form that there's a bunch of different options for different majors and different regions and stuff like that. But these were also very, very helpful. Now, before I wrap up, I'd like to just go over some of the ramifications, because I didn't really conclude what I was talking about with all of this awesome stuff. I think there's a really interesting and important conversation to be had about the effect of manufacturing and of like cultural export and all this stuff on the state of music technology in a certain region. China makes a lot of our stuff, and even if there's like a how would you say, there's this concept of like the cheap Chinese clone where you can like get a bunch of like decently working things that are a lot more affordable. I think at the end of the day, it's important to observe the impact that these kinds of systems, the system of cheap Chinese clones, or the reality that a lot of the manufacturing is done in China, how that affects the musical culture of today. Because music technology is not just the latest like synthesizers or DACs or any of that stuff. It's anything technological that you can use to make music, and that encompasses a lot of stuff. And so one thing you might have noticed is in all of the, I'm just going to go through this presentation real quick. In a lot of the pictures and stuff that I have of like venues, things of that nature, we're seeing keyboards, drum sets, more drum sets, guitars, things of that nature. And the more technologically maybe digital items are similarly based on like the piano keyboard and things of that nature. And I think it's really interesting to consider how things could have been if the Western technological influences weren't as strong. I think a great example of this is this one guy, and I'm just going to show an old presentation that I made. Jin Qin. This guy is considered the father of Chinese electronic instruments, and I think his approach to making music technology is really, really cool. It is based on, like, while it employs electronic principles that was used in early analog synthesis and amplification and things of that nature, it brings in the instruments that he was used to playing. So things like guzheng, things like guqin, and other such instruments. And I think one of the most interesting developments of that is his ribbon synthesizers. So he has a bunch of different versions of these. And the interface is fundamentally different from what we'll see out of like a Nord keyboard versus a chord keyboard. At the end of the day, they're based off of the piano keyboard, even though you can interact with their controllers a little bit differently. The interface is mostly the same. We also have wind synthesizers and things of that nature, which are really awesome, and I love to see that. But and like even bowed and stringed instrument sort of things, but we don't see a lot of this sort of thing where you're basing it off of a realistically very long-standing instrument. There are, for example, sitar digital instruments, and things of that nature that are either expected to, you're sort of expected to either play them as a in your DAW by programming the notes in, or by playing them on a piano keyboard, but you don't have, you're never going to get the same experience of, or even a similar experience of how you bend strings and slide and things like that, as you would on the real instrument. And this, I think, is a very compelling way to get a lot closer to that. So I don't know, a little bit of a, I don't know if you'd call that a rant or a couple observations, but that's about all I have to say on that, just to wrap things up. So I was a lot less close to the end than I thought. Thank you all for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions now. Oh, I'm just seeing chat now. Whoops. All right. So, yeah, the karaoke stuff. I have to say, from my looks through what's it called? The piano shops, they seem to be a lot less conservative about how they're styling the pianos. I guess, like, at the end of the day, I think most of this is probably veneer. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. So mostly looks thing, but I don't know, it looks cool, and so, like, why not, right? I think we get a little bit in on the what's it called? The it has to be the piano black, either glossy or matte, but it's always black, for that, like, classy vibe. But you can really do things a lot more fun, and a lot of pop artists over the years have certainly done this. But in classical settings, certainly you'd loathe to see a bright red piano. Anyways,
Why don't they design piano like that? Like back in the days, like with harpsichords and stuff, they would like have intricate like designs like on the wood, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Nowadays everything's just black. So boring.
Yeah, and like all the ornaments that you'll see on a lot of, let me see if I can find some pictures real quick. On some of the traditional Chinese instruments, like, yeah, there's designs here. The guqin is an ancient instrument, so I'm not surprised that it's not the most elaborate in some of these pictures. But you can sort of see, like, on the headstock here, there's like all sorts of designs and stuff, and it's cool. I think I really care about the concept that what we're doing here in music and tech is also art, right? We're creating things that allow people to make art, that gives them more options, that gives them more freedom of expression. But in actually doing so, we're also making our own form of art. I saw this, it just reminded me of this one guitar I saw yesterday that was just absolutely gorgeous. The craftsmanship, everything that goes into it. It is a similar sort of labor. And so, like, is it cool that we have synthesizers that can do all sorts of different things? Absolutely. It would also be cool to see some more fun in them, you know, whimsy, as they call it. Professor Dannenberg, when US Japan had the I'm not sure about that. I think that would be a great question for Peter. Actually, I can text him right now to see if he gets back to me if you want. Yes. Nime is wonderful. Lots of really, really cool stuff happening there. I'm going to text Peter real quick.
That was really just an aside, but if you have an answer, it would be curious. The guys at Yamaha were quite proud that they felt that they had the best wood and sort of exclusive access to some really great stuff to build pianos with, which I thought was just amusing.
Yeah, no, Yamaha definitely, like, Steinways are nice, but like Yamahas are consistent, and it's hard to beat that when you have such a complex instrument, because small inconsistencies, I at least as a pianist myself, throw me off more than if the sound is a particular way. So, but yeah, any other questions or comments, observations?
Do you know what kind of wood that piano in the middle of that one slide you had was made out of? It's just
It
wild.
was, oh, this here? I
Yeah,
have
that's
no
gorgeous.
idea, unfortunately. I can see if Google turns anything up real quick. Because I would like to know myself.
That's great.
It's gorgeous grain.
Design like what, like paint the piano. That'd be fun. Public carrier. Do it on the cut.
On the cut.
Yeah.
Isn't there a student organization that does karaoke? I'm surprised there isn't.
Not
Like,
publicly, I don't
public
think.
though. Like in front
Not-
of everyone.
Not on the streets.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Roselaw wood. Nope.
Nah.
Seen
Oh
any-
no, that's wire. Whoops.
Those tea sets look similar.
Let's go green apple wood
For smoking.
That's a thing.
veneer. That's not quite what we were looking at. Maybe. Oh, that's sort of, I would say,
Oh,
pretty
okay.
similar. It's not as poppy, but
Yeah, looks cool though.
it does look cool. Yeah, no, I love wood. Wood can be so pretty sometimes. Most of the time, I would say, actually. Okay, Peter just got back to me. He says, I believe Steinway has a separate source. So there you go.
Interesting.
I have a question.
Sure.
If when you like looked at various like instruments and or technologies like music technologies like speakers and guitars and things like that,
Mhm.
did you see more of a predominance of like local Chinese brands, or was it a lot of the similar brands that we're used to in the US?
Yeah, so that's one of the main like it's a really interesting phenomenon. There really aren't that many, I don't know if you call them local, but I didn't see a whole lot of that. Like there's just a lot of less recognizable brands, but I'd be very surprised if, just based on the equipment that they actually are, if they were like locally made or like boutique sort of things. The overall, it looks similar to, like, if I went out in Pittsburgh and did a similar sort of thing, I feel we'd see a lot of similarities, except it's more consolidated, I feel, in Roland and Yamaha. There was just a lot less variety, I feel, in overall brands for mics, for speakers, for mixers, all this kind of stuff. So kind of interesting, kind of like sort of evidence that, at the end of the day, these are international companies, and so they kind of just make their stuff, and since they're so big, they can do things more competitively, and they just get a lot more market share, basically. So they're kind of just everywhere, right? But yeah, that was a good question.
I mean, almost intuitively, I would think that, especially in like, I guess maybe China's not so developing anymore,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in terms of like in a developing country, you generally see like uh people just buy whatever is like the cheapest. And
Right, right.
if
Which
those
is,
high-end brands are not, then
Mhm.
then people would tend to opt for some like, generic clone version.
Which is actually one of the things that makes economic development ironically harder for them, right? Because even though it's cheaper in the purchase of the thing in that moment, the money is leaving the country, and so um, yeah, we can have a international politics sort of thing. But no, that's a very very important part of it. Like really, and a lot of the motivation behind me doing this and my interest in it is just how do things play out internationally? Like how much how much cultural export of like musical ideas to China contributed versus the fact that a lot of manufacturing is done there due to maybe the way labor laws are set up and stuff like that. Um, like some of that stuff is still a little unclear to me, but I think it's still a very compelling thing to look into further.
I have like a follow-up question to like Audie and like the discussion about the Roland and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Do you think the reason why Roland and Yamaha are like so dominant in China is because like geographically Japan is just really close to China, and like maybe American, like do you know if American companies or Western companies in general have tried to tap in, I mean, right?
Um, are you asking if I saw like American companies,
Or like
um,
brands like European or whatever, right?
just like a, yeah, proximity sort of thing? Um, I would. It's hard to say because currently international product stuff is, especially at the scale of these companies, is not that difficult. Um, but it's possible that companies that we're more used to seeing in the States um, are not necessarily either international or as international. So, um, so yeah, I'm not sure, but I'd imagine proximity does play a role. Just not sure how big of a role, I guess. Yeah, Professor Sullivan. Yeah, the Yamaha and Roland are big here. I just feel like when I'm walking around, um, there's more things, you know, Behringer, Apollo, like all that kind of stuff. Presonus. Um, is Presonus international? I don't know.
Probably is.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah.
Wonder
But
if,
yeah,
wonder if the price tag on some of that stuff is just way higher there than some of the Roland and Yamaha stuff too. So it just gets used. I mean, I know stuff like from here, like, Mesa Boogies and things like that, when they go overseas, people pay, you think they're
oh yeah,
expensive, here, but in Europe and in Asia, like the cost is like double when
it's
that's already an
ridiculous.
expensive thing here. So, um, I don't know why that is or what I mean, I'm sure shipping it over there is a big deal and everything too, but
Mhm.
the countries probably just mark them up too, and the people, because there aren't that many of them and whatever. So.
Yeah,
Did
and
you
also
bring
they. Oh, sorry.
mic or anything like that?
What was that?
Did you bring back a Superlux mic or anything? That was
Unfortunately, I didn't manage to bring much more home besides clothes and a lot of this this soap. It's like it's a Shanghai what's the word in English? I'll just say it's a Shanghai like popular product. It's like sulfur soap. It's my grandmother wanted me to get some, so I did. So
Did you have time to visit family over there at all while you were there?
Yeah. So my first stop at Qingdao was I went straight to my aunt's place, and it was great to go back and see them. It's actually been 20 years for some of them, and so had some great
So you
time with
remember them
family.
like it was yesterday, right?
Of course. No, I had to get reintroduced to a couple people. Obviously, my memory at 1 years old was not the sharpest. Yeah. But and then in Beijing, I was actually staying with my one of my mom's old friends. And so who yeah, also 20 years since she saw my mom. So hopefully I can bring my mom over next time. Um, but yeah, it was great to see family and spend all that time. But also the time I spent with the study abroad program with my classmates, it was just a very enriching experience. So again, I'm going to hammer on this. If you have the slightest hint of a willingness to study abroad or just go abroad, and like that's just an idea in your head, like just look into the options. Is there a study abroad program that CMU or somebody else offers that you can take advantage of? Is there a scholarship that will make it actually a reasonable option for you? Because like again, I didn't think this was going to be in my future a couple years back, and it ended up being one of the more impactful things that I've done.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this, Preston. And we hope to talk to you again about more stuff.
Yeah. Now we've got stuff coming up.
So let us know when you have a new invention and you can demonstrate for us.
We'll do.
Very much.
Thanks, guys.
Very cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.